So I'm super excited to have Paul Harvey here today because Paul is a very, very unique, interesting story, because we were talking about just a second ago off camera that one of the things that I see is I get so many entrepreneurs who come to me and their immediate forefront goal is they want to make more money in life. And money is usually a means to something deeper, a happiness and a lifestyle. And often they're doing things they hate with people they hate, doing delivery methods they hate, and they want to scale a business that they already hate now. And it becomes just energetically impossible where you can't get to those next levels because you're not really showing up. And so Paul has a really unique story because he runs the Life, Passion, and Business podcast. And not only did he lose his passion and get it back, but he's also, really, every week he's interviewing somebody new who's gone through something similar. So he has a very unique perspective on how to ignite that inner fire that makes you want to do the business in the first place. And then the deeper part of making it fit into your life. So obviously, Paul, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So let's talk at the beginning here, because a lot of people think that there's some people who are just like Tony Robbins and they wake up and they have this zest for life. Your story starts in a different place. You lost everything and kind of started asking yourself those bigger questions. Can you kind of take me through what that experience was like?
So I didn't lose everything. Okay, so I moved from London to Scotland 14 years ago, and I moved here predominantly so I could have an active life as a father with my son. That was the journey we were on. My son was 2. We wanted to get out of the city, out of London, and an opportunity came out to move to Scotland. So I came here, and a load of things happened. It was quite an intuitive move, and then we talked about intuition, how important intuition is. And a lot of things came into play, and we can talk about that if we need to, but a lot of things fell into place. And I didn't need to work at the time. We sold a big London house and bought a big Scottish house, but there's a very big difference in the price of those two things.
Yeah.
And so we had that freedom to live as we wanted to for a couple of years, and that worked out very, very well. But what in the process we did, we actually reduced our outgoings. We actually changed, because of the way how we were living, we chose deliberately to kind of live a frugal lifestyle, I guess, if you want to call it that way. But it's a lifestyle that we enjoyed living that way. And I think that's where we touched on, really, in terms of your entrepreneurs, because what they're doing is they're chasing a dream of outward happiness and outward this and outward stuff. And in actual fact, it starts from the other way around. It's like, how can you be happy inside? I mean, we've not had major holidays in 10 years. We don't want them. We're not that interested in traveling and going to exotic locations. We actually just like being together. And happiness is an inside job. I think that's the thing, is that's it. I mean, you can look outside of yourself all the time, but all you're doing is you're using outside influences to try and change an inside state. When actually, absolutely everything that you experience and do all comes from the inside. I mean, I had a revelation recently. Sex and masturbation are probably the same thing.
Let's hear it.
Well, okay. So, masturbation is you basically pleasuring yourself. But when you have sex with someone, there's no button that says you will have an orgasm. There's nothing actually that makes it happen. It's your head that makes it happen, and the same process is going on. So, all right, I am making love to this person and I'm enjoying this process and it's exciting, and therefore you lead towards an orgasm, possibly. But that, and it's the same process in terms of when you are masturbating. So they are the same thing. I know people don't think, oh no, it can't be the same thing. But there's no button. Nothing happens different. Nothing gets pressed differently from pleasuring yourself or making love to someone. Yes, there is a series of feelings and associated connections and things that go with that. But all they're doing is changing your state of mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so everything is about state of mind. So if I feel pissed off in the work that I'm doing, it's a state of mind, because I'm not actually inwardly enjoying what I'm doing or seeing the joy of it. If I'm working with people I don't like, it's not going to put me in a good state of mind.
So that's obviously a really, really interesting thing because, 99% of the time, even though what you say is obviously true, I see people doing the opposite, which is quite the opposite. They're chasing some kind of external thing. Now, you've had a pretty wide perspective because, through this podcast, you've been able to connect with a lot of people who have passions and happiness on a lot of different topics. What are some of the things you really see in common when people sort of ignite that inner fire that makes them want to do what they really love?
The common journey with everyone I've interviewed has always been, it's a question of a passion doesn't just turn up. Passion is not something, again, it's like the orgasm button, don't exist. There's no passion button, there's no orgasm button, there's no happiness button. It is a progression of something. And so you have to do things, you have to be prepared to step out of yourself or to do new things to find that passion. So if people get locked in the same journey, I'm doing internet marketing and I'm going to do this on this computer here because this is the laptop lifestyle and it's supposed to be good. If that's what people are locked into and it's not doing it for them, then it won't do it for them. And that's what I noticed. The people who are successful, who have had this journey towards passion, they do a lot of things. They chop and change things up, and they don't repeat the same thing all the time. They will change. They'll do something new. And it looks like 5-year cycles. That's what it tends to look like. It looks like they do something for around 5 years and then move on and then move on. And I know that's what the observation I've made about it. I think a lot of it's about, it's impossible to recapture happiness from something that made you happy before, in a way. Yeah. And in actual fact, looking at this from a different perspective, I can see it in my son. And here's a good example of this. And probably it's an example that could be, he is now 16. And so he has had a progression, obviously, through his childhood. And what we did last summer, I think it was, we changed his bedroom. We redecorated his bedroom and we moved it away from the child, pre-teen bedroom that he had to give him a teenage bedroom, a much more sophisticated room. But in the process, he had to get rid of a lot of stuff. And now he has got a cupboard somewhere in the house where he's kept all these toys that he didn't want to get rid of. And the reason he couldn't get rid of them is that because they've got such a connection to past happiness and joy.
Right.
But I could see him holding this piece of Playmobil, which is like this adventurous pack or something, some spy thing, with a car and all kind of things it does. And I could see him holding this thing and wanting it to give him the same kind of reward that it used to give him. But he can't play with it in the same way anymore. It doesn't do it anymore. It's like, I can't get excited about that anymore. I can get excited about what it meant to me, but there's no connection to it now. And I think that's the point in life. We tend to try and repeat past happiness. I think adults tend to try and do this. They tend to go, well, that worked for me before, so it'll work for me again.
Yeah.
Well, if it didn't work the last time, why should it bloody work this time?
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know, I've monologued a bit there. Does that resonate with you at all?
I would say absolutely. And I've seen that just kind of show up for so many people in so many different ways where hanging on to things, like you said, that once made them happy, but they've grown and evolved and no longer represent who they are. Personally, I actually did that in a business sense. The most obvious example, for 7 years, I built an SEO agency, and I started very slow, but eventually got really good at getting clients, getting people, bringing resources together. But there was a big problem in the middle of it, which is I hated doing SEO. I hated the clients. I hated the work. I hated Google. And
doesn't everybody?
But in the beginning, you start this game because it was really exciting to get clients. It was really exciting to be able to rank a website. It was really exciting to be able to turn somebody from not having any business to suddenly, like, I had a couple of people who told me like they tripled their business in a matter of months from the work we did, and it was really, really exciting to me. But eventually it became really kind of just drudge. Every day was the same, and it was really monotonous, and I spent so many days writing articles about the same old shit. And for me, it just really, really wore me down. But of course, I liked getting paid for it, and I liked seeing people happy at the end. So it was always this great conflict. Now, you've mentioned before that when people kind of go through those things where they're kind of stuck, that intuition is like one of these things that really helps people pull themselves out of it, that it's not usually some kind of logical, well, just do this or just do that. Usually there's kind of like an intuitive feeling that guides them through this kind of reigniting their passion. Can you maybe share a good example, either you personally or somebody you've interviewed went through, to kind of how they've been able to turn that back on when they're kind of stuck in a rut?
I'm not sure I've got anything direct that I can share on that one. I'm not saying from a business perspective. I mean, there are.
How about
I have intuition. I have intuition in my life all the time, and I can't say it's powerful stuff, but it's little things. It's like I'm going backwards and forwards at the moment from Scotland to Essex because I'm involved in a family renovation project. And in the last cycle, I do it like 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, and we would do it. I'm going tonight for the last week. But in the last cycle, I said to I looked at the flights, and booking flights, and I think, oh, I should book that flight. And I said to my brother, I think I should book that flight. He goes, no, we're going to finish it. We're going to do it. And I go, no, I think we should. No, we're going to finish it. And I went with him rather than my intuition. And I was right. I should have booked that flight.
Yeah.
So I ended up driving home in the end because I didn't book the flight. So I drove 600 miles to bring the car back, and I really could do with the car back down in Essex this week now. So I ignored my intuition at that point, and now I'm going to pay for it because I'm going to Essex tonight, and I'm going to be without a car for a week in Essex, which is fine. I can cope, but it would have been really useful to have the car there. So yeah, so there are times when intuition is really critical. Now, how do you know it's intuition? Well, you kind of get a feeling about it. It's like, but it's about being aware and listening to those feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all had that where you meet someone and someone's talking to you and you think to yourself, something don't match. The words. I'm listening to the word you're saying to me, but what you're saying to me doesn't fit with something. And that's exactly what your entrepreneurs are doing. That's why they're not growing their businesses, because there is a mismatch and people's intuition will pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's what I was going to say. So I can't think of anything specific intuition-wise in terms of people's businesses. Certainly, I'd have to go back and listen to the podcast people, because the different programs about which ones worked and which ones didn't use intuition. Ali McGill strikes me as someone who uses a lot of intuition. Now, he's an accountant, but he doesn't call himself an accountant. He calls himself a creative accountant. Because it's not what he sells. He doesn't sell accountancy. He actually sells him. He sells his what he does.
Yeah.
And if you look at his career, I mean, we had a long conversation. That's an hour podcast, and it just went on about his life progression. And to me, it all sort of fell into place. Now, I don't think he would say he uses intuition, but I think he bloody does. I think he does. I think there was something about him that it looks like his life is guided. The other one, actually, Russell Dalgleish. Now, he was an interesting guy. He's one of the top 100 entrepreneurs in Scotland. He's well known in Scotland as a major entrepreneur. And whenever there is a government thing going on up here, or there's a business thing going up here, the TV companies up here pull him in, and he's always on TV talking about his reaction to this new bit of information. So, he's, in terms of the media, he is well accepted as someone who knows what he's talking about. When I interviewed him, I said, why did you accept this podcast with me? And he said, because I always know that the universe brings me the people I need to speak to when I need to speak to them. And that's a man, my spiritual practice tells me this. Now, that's a man who's using his spiritual practice in his business, and it's not sent him wrong. Yeah. He's doing really well.
Yeah.
For him, it's a spiritual practice. It's like, I know that people come to me and talk to me, and there'll be something in this either for me or for them. So those are examples of intuition I can think of, but nothing really tangible. But I think that's the point of intuition. There is nothing tangible, because if it was, we'd all be using it, obviously.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because I always hear people say that about intuitive feelings. They're like, oh, if it's so good, why don't you go use it to win the lottery? That's the famous example, as if intuition.
Ah, no, I've got an example of that one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Now, I need to find that podcast because I haven't found it for a while. There was a lady, it was a podcast I was listening to,
Yeah.
and they were talking to someone who deals with intuition. She actually works with people with intuition. And she was lying in bed one morning, and she was in a dream state. And she suddenly said to her husband, who was slightly awake next to her, said, how many numbers are there in the lottery? And he went, 6. I'm seeing some numbers. Do you want to write them down? So he leapt out of bed and wrote these numbers down. And it was Wednesday morning. They were all busy, this, that, and the other. He said, I'll get these tickets. I'll put those numbers on. Anyway, Friday evening came when the lottery came, and those numbers came up. But he forgot to buy the ticket.
Oh, brutal.
I mean, we're talking like $6 million here. It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But for her, what she realized, that was her intuition telling her she didn't need the money.
Yeah.
Because she was so guided by intuition, she didn't need to win the lottery. Her life is a lottery that she wins every day. She doesn't need to win it. So, I mean, there are lovely examples of intuition and where it works. And, you know, people kind of go, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've got lots of personal examples. I mean, I can remember when my wife and I were all down in Devon when her father died. And my wife and her mother were in a car going to meet her brother from the airport. Mm-hmm. And they came to a roundabout in Devon somewhere, and they had options. They could go left or right. And they were trying to pick up this guy from a train station, but they didn't know what train he would get, because he was getting off a flight in London, and they didn't know what train he would catch. They knew roughly what time he would be there. So if they'd have gone right, they'd have gone to the kind of closer station, or they'd have gone left, they'd have gone to a further away station. So they didn't know which way to go. Anyway, a van, as they were coming to the roundabout, this truck came back round the roundabout and went into the long direction. And on the side of the truck, it said Adams. And his name is Adam. And they went, follow that truck. And because his name was on it. So they followed the truck. And of course, they pulled up at the station, and Adam was just getting off the train, going to look for the other train. You know, and it's like that was guidance by some means. And you could say, oh, yeah, it wouldn't happen. I don't know. But, you know, it happened, and it saved them a lot of journey, and it saved him an extra train journey.
I should also add that you mentioned before, because you told me that story last time we were kind of chatting, that this was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, before everybody had a smartphone and you could just text and reach everybody.
Oh, yeah, there was no phones. There's no way of texting him or phoning him. Yeah, you just had to kind of trust the fact that he would be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if we can work with intuition. I think it's very powerful stuff. And I think it's connected with passion, I guess. If your passion is in something, you will be more open to opportunity and to intuition.
Yeah. So
a lot of this stuff makes the world look like the Matrix. That's the trouble. You look at this world and go, well, maybe we are in the Matrix. Maybe it's all just a computer game and we don't realize we're being played.
That's totally the Matrix, for sure.
Well, I had some views on this. It's like I watch my son play gaming. He's a big gamer. He loves gaming. Yeah. And, you know, he's constantly playing these. And I sat looking at these characters playing each other and said, do the characters actually know they're being played? Well, of course they don't. They're being played. They're in a game.
Yeah.
So how would we know we're not being played?
You know, actually, Elon Musk actually says that he thinks that's really true.
I'm wondering, because it's like you do get these, you know, the intuitions and the kind of glitches in the machine, the things that happen. You kind of go, And when you look at the world in terms of, look at some of the things in nature, you look at some of the kind of, you know, the symbiotic relationships of some bits of plants and animals and things. So how on earth did that evolve? You know, that one flower requires that one insect to pollinate it. And the two things are totally unique, and they could not survive without each other. Yeah. How? Unless someone was drawing it up, you know, I don't know. I digress a little.
These are the best ones. I like when we have a bunch of open lists going. It's interesting. I find I've met obviously a lot of people in this world who also like what I would call overly rational, overly kind of scientific, even though they're not as scientific as they think they are. And even they sometimes have the intuitive feelings of like, they'll get a sudden sense of somebody and then their phone will ring, or they'll get a text message and it's from that exact person that they were thinking of, or a song on the radio just seems like it's talking right to them, and they're just usually kind of quick to dismiss it. And you mentioned that those things are really a function of passion, that you're much more open to it when you're enjoying it and you have that kind of internal state. Now, I know we kind of talked about this before, and there is no one size fits all to like reignite passion or to find it or to strengthen it. But what are some of the things you think that can really help somebody find that sort of artistic, creative side of them that really just, enjoys life?
Okay, so there are several things you can do here in terms of finding passion, as far as I can see, and it's stuff that I'm starting to explore myself. So let's explore why I lost my passion. So I lost passion because I settled into this life here and I was very happy with it. But after the financial crash in 2008, we did start having some struggles here in terms of financially. So we went through that process, and it's depressing when you don't have enough money. That's very, very true. It's quite hard to get through life and constantly have to juggle bills. So that was, I guess, a time when I got disillusioned with the work I was doing. And the other side of it, I also got disillusioned with the industry I'm in. So I'm a general marketer. I do marketing. I do internet marketing. A lot of it's digital marketing these days. But that's where I earn my money. My passion and business will probably develop into a business over the next few months. But at the moment, I kind of get the majority of my money from digital marketing. But I got disillusioned with the general marketing industry, where people are just selling stuff for the sake of it. Basically what we're doing, we're selling stuff which is basically passing through someone's hands on the road to landfill. I just hate this idea of a throwaway society, and that's what kind of depressed me. And I guess I looked at society and thought to myself, fuck what we're doing to this world. So that's part of why I lost my passion. I think it's that aspect of it. And I noticed, at this point, like 5 years ago, I noticed my father was going downhill in terms of his own view and value of life. And I guess in some ways I could see myself following his pattern. And it was his death last year which woke me up to the fact that I was really following in my father's footsteps in terms of starting to see the world in a very negative way. And so I started the podcast out of that journey, out of kind of saying to myself, no, there must be a way. I must talk to people and find out more about it. So for me, that's been my journey. That's how I have rediscovered my passion, because I started talking to people about theirs. But I've also been open to the idea that you have to do new things. You have to kind of step out and do new things. And they say, like joy is the other side of fear.
Yeah.
If you can step through something that's frightening you or a resistance, I think passion and things worth fighting for in a way. So my journey over the last 18 months, I guess, has also been a physical journey, because I've been working out a lot more. I am fit. I'm 55 years old. I have a six-pack. I've never had a six-pack in my life. I am fitter than I have ever been. My wife looks at me and goes, "What the fuck have you done to your body?" She can't believe what I've done to my body. I ran 10K this morning. And if you'd said to me if you'd have said to me at the beginning of April that I'll be running 10K by the end of June, I would have never believed you. And it's just taken me like that a length of time to get up to that speed. All right, I'm not fast at it, but I'm still doing it. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think it's about having that desire to step out and do something new. If you've never sung before, go and sing in a choir. If you never draw anything, just get a bit of paper and start drawing. Do stuff different, because the more things that you do, the more opportunity you find to just step out of your comfort zone. That's where passion lies.
Wow, I'll give you a little mini round of applause for that one. That was good.
I think for me, my journey was that I was doing this podcast and I was contacting people I knew to speak. And then I stepped up and started talking to people I'd never spoken to before. I mean, Russell Dalgleish, he's quite a big guy to talk to, really. You know, he's the top 100th entrepreneur in Scotland.
Yeah.
And I just started following him on LinkedIn and started commenting. And that's what I've been doing with all my big podcast people. You know, I spoke, you know, from the internet marketing world, Doberman Dan, I had a conversation with him. Lovely conversation with him, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very revealing at the end. He's quite interesting. You know, and it's like, you know, I spoke to some quite interesting people. I'm speaking to Kevin Breeding this afternoon sometime. So there's some nice people turning up who, without this podcast, I wouldn't have the confidence to talk to them.
Yeah, you actually, you hit on something pretty deep there, which is I've found in my own journey that to be true, as well as a number of people I've spoken with over the last little bit, is as they sort of upgraded their passion, they also upgraded their kind of like social circle and the people they knew and the people they kept around. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what that's been like for you to just know so many cool and interesting, exciting people, and how that kind of leads you to have more passion by seeing what they're doing? And
well, of course, you know, yes, yeah. When you start seeing what these people are doing, and then they compliment you on what you're doing, it does massage the ego a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, I have a podcast or someone said, yeah, I'm really impressed with what you're doing. And, oh, thank you. He's impressed with me. You know, it's like, actually, I'm impressed with you. Yeah. That's why we're speaking. You know, there's a certain amount of reflected glory from talking to people like that, I guess, or reflected authority, I think is the word we're looking for. So there is a value certainly in that. I can't say I have changed my social network yet. I live so far north, it's quite hard to connect with anybody outside here, really.
But even if not just physically, you're doing it digitally, right?
Yeah, I am doing it digitally. Yeah, I am. Yeah, so it is nice to talk to people. But I guess, you know, having a conversation on the podcast doesn't make us friends. Let's put it that way. You know, it means that, yes, they'll take my call and they'll answer my email, but we're not friends yet. Yeah. I mean, who knows? You have to do stuff, don't you? It's like if you want to connect with people, you have to connect with people. So working at it. Russell Dalgleish was a good example. He said to me, you know, when you've got a product, come and talk to me. I'd like to show it to the entrepreneur network. So, you know, I've got an in there that I didn't have before talking to him. And he's emailed me back several times and said to me, I think you're onto something here. You know, carry on with it. So it's nice to get the support from people like him. You know, and I guess to some extent, I obviously feel, you know, I've mentioned him several times in this podcast. I obviously feel a little bit, you know, I mean, I feel like I've got some value with him. And that's what makes me feel good about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else other to say on that, really, because I'm not yet. It's still early days. This podcast is just about to go for a major rebranding. You know, I've moved it out from the introspective bit. If you listen to it, it's very slow and introspective. But it's about me finding my journey. I think I'm there now. I've got it now. I don't want to share the actual words with you at the moment. I will share them with you sometime. But I'm recognizing I want to build a community of people that actually want to express and find their passion. And I'm going to use the tools of this podcast to help them do that. So that's where the rebranding's coming. I think within about a month, you won't recognize this podcast. It will look very different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of probably mirrors the personal journey in a lot of ways where
yes,
it's always different, but it's always the same. At the same time, the real principles and reasons why you got into it are probably the same since the beginning, but you know, the you that's coming to that is very different.
Absolutely, and I also think there's also a journey on here, because I don't think, you know, I can't say I've got my passion. There are times when I'm not passionate. There are times when I am. But I'm also learning to accept those times. Yesterday, I went to the gym in the morning quite early, and I was coming back through town. And because I'm now running around this entire town, I know where all the fruit trees are. And so I passed a cherry tree with ripe cherries on it yesterday morning, and I stopped and thought, I might pick some of those. So I picked cherries for half an hour yesterday morning, which you kind of say, okay, is that a big deal? No, but it was absolutely beautiful. I was standing by the river, picking cherries and just enjoying the sunshine and the peace and the silence of Sunday morning. There was such a serenity in that. Is that a rah, 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 rah passion? No, it's not a rah, rah, rah passion. It is a beautiful, gentle moment. And I'm going to have some cherry vodka in about 4 weeks.
Double whammy. Actually, it's funny that you say the comment before on the rah 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 passion, the kind of Tony Robbins stuff, I'm going to go get him, I'm going to go do this. I feel like for most people, that's a very egoic state, and it's not a real underlying passion. And I like to use the word more inspiration, which is a more holistic, bigger, deeper reasons why you're doing something, and it really kind of reflects in your being. And like you mentioned, there's always going to be times, everybody's human. Like even Tony Robbins, I've read a couple of his books. He has downtime. He has moments where he doubts himself and he worries, and people think he doesn't because he's doing what he does. And so I think that that's really normal. If somebody listening to this wants to really fire up their passion and get into your podcast or anything else you're doing, hopefully future products from what I hear, what's the best way to do that, Paul?
You can find me at lifepassionandbusiness.com. I think that's the best place to look. That's what we're about at the moment, and that's what's moving forward. I mean, yeah, you can find me there, lifepassionandbusiness.com. It's also a Facebook page and a Facebook group, but predominantly the website.
Hell yeah. Well, Paul, I'm going to keep you for a minute here off air, but I like to keep these usually about half an hour, so that way people can have like nice little half-hour digestible chunks. So thank you so much for doing this, and I feel a little more inspired today than I did talking.
That's good. That's good. Great. Thanks a lot. It's been an absolute pleasure.